lifetime, normally a 3 or 4 level device, you will get a transition across and then a lasing action. To magnify the gain, you normally put 2 mirrors, a fully reflecting and a partially transmitting. Partially transmitting means a few percent mirror. And that will be a classical laser system. If you have an ND, ruby laser, one of these laser pointers, well, not one of these laser pointers, one of these sort of helium neon type lasers, then that's what you construct. And how you know you've got lasing action is you pump power in, let's say it's an optical pump, you build up effectively to a threshold, and then you get lasing action. And that's classical for any laser system. What one would like is thresholdless lasing. That's quite hard to get. So you pump energy in, you excite the system, and then you start seeing gain. And that's true of any laser system. So if you want to make a good laser system, you want a low threshold energy, so you minimize that, you minimize the amount of light you put in. And then you want a high slope efficiency. In other words, what you get out divided by what you put in. It's the slope of that line. So when I talk about efficiencies, that's what I'm talking about. When I talk about thresholds, I'm talking about that energy difference in there. For a continuous working laser, you want to make that threshold as low as possible. For an efficient system, you want that slope to be as steep as possible. And that's true of all laser systems. Okay. Now that's a mirrored laser material or device. What I'm going to talk about is mirror-less lasers, lasers without mirrors. Okay, now the important thing, I told you about photonic band gaps yesterday in terms of the reflection bands of cholesteric or chironomatics. In a laser system, what you want is that the group velocity of your laser light goes to 0, which gives you a very high density of states, because the density of states is inversely proportional to the group velocity of your photons. You want a long photon lifetime. Okay, this is the background theory to the system I'm talking about. And if you can get those conditions, then in a chironomatic, you get lasing at the band edge. I'll show you what this means and take you through this in a moment. What is important in the liquid crystal laser systems is that word there, microns. The laser cavities are the order of microns. Okay, so an optical path length might be typically 10 microns, 15 microns, 20 microns. And the beam diameter might be 15 microns, 20 microns, maybe 100 microns. But I'll take you through the role of those numbers in a moment. Put that into context. The laser cavity is no bigger, no longer, no wider than the width of a human hair. That is the size of the laser cavities I'm talking about. And that, you will see, will become important when I get towards the end of the lecture. So you're talking about lasers, the dimension, the diameter of a human hair. You know, and that for an organic system, as you will see, is quite phenomenal for the amount of light you can get out of that system. Now, it is a fairly recent subject. Victor Coquetel and Genack actually published their first paper on real practical lasers just over 10 years ago. Okay. And why the field has progressed so fast, and you will see, is that the construction of a liquid crystal laser device is in essence no different to the construction of a liquid crystal display. You have all the same components, and because you know how to make liquid crystal displays, pixels, picture elements, you know how to make lasers. And that's one of the reasons why the subject has progressed so fast. So, what are the ingredients? I want you to go back to your laboratories, get your molecular cooking set out, and actually use these ingredients to make your own liquid crystal laser. It's very straightforward, providing you know what to do. So what do you need? I'm going to talk initially about the one-dimensional lasers, if you will, the chironomatic systems, but you could equally have a brief laser as I'll show you towards the end. So what do you need? If you have a chironomatic, you have the helicoidal structure. You remember my little model from the Great War, okay? Different colors, different pitches. That's the model of the system you have. So that's your helical structure. No. In that laser system, because of the pseudo-layer planes, you have periodic dielectric tensor. You heard about those last week. You have a 1D photonic band gap. And what you do in a chironomatic is actually suppress, in the band gap, you suppress emission of photons. And the photons upconvert in wavelength, down in energy, to come out and to be emitted at the band edges, the long wavelength edge or the short wavelength edge. I'll explain all these terms in a moment. So what you have is a photonic band gap laser, a photonic band edge laser. So how do you make it? You take a chironomatic. Okay, this is a very good example, because in there I have colours. And what I have in terms of colour in a little crystal laser is dyes, fluorescence light harvester, a dye that will absorb at short wavelengths and emit at long wavelengths. So that's the fluorescer. As I said, you get gain at the band edge, and what we're doing at the moment is photopumping, and right towards the end I'll talk about photopumping but through a parallel LED system. So those are the components. So as we went through, what kinds of photonic band gap lasers are there? There's the chironomatic that I'm going to talk about. So that would be your selective reflection or your photonic band gap. If you looked at it, I said you can make lasers with chiral symmetric Cs. You can. You need to make a freestanding film, and then look down the helix axis, and you can actually make an efficient laser. I mean, if you one of our papers, if you look up in SPIE a few years ago, 2005, then there's a description of that system works. And equally, you can get the blue phase lasers. Again, I'll talk about that at the end of the lecture. So the three systems. What I'm going to concentrate on to give you the essential science of technology is the chironomatic phase. As I said to you yesterday, there's no more than the kind of liquid crystal device that you can stick on your forehead to measure temperature. It's a chironomatic that reflects, has a band gap that reflects certain wavelengths. It reflects them, they're forbidden in the band gap. So what do? You pump. If you looked at a chironomatic, as I showed you yesterday, you put white light in, you'll see reflected light of one-handedness and transmitted light of the opposite handedness, the handedness of the helix effect. And that is your photonic band gap. I put those dotted lines in there to denote the band edges. The band edges are important, because if light gets trapped in your photonic band gap, eventually it's got to escape, it's got to leak away. And it can only do that at the band edges. And then there are conditions of polarization of your input light and the type of dye you have that decides whether you have long wavelengths or short wavelengths. Okay. So, how does it work? You have the band gap, you have a dye, and you have lasing. Okay, so what you do is you put your gain medium, your fluorescent dye, there's the absorption peak, there's the emission peak. You put that into the chironomatic. A few percent of dye normally suffices. Again, I'll show you what's important. And then when you pump the system, out comes the lasing light right at the band edge. That's the photonic band gap in there, and these are the lasing modes. Okay? And that's what you typically see. Now that, as I've drawn it, is not a very efficient laser, because you don't normally see all these side bands. Again, I'll come on to how that works. That's more often what you see. There is the photonic band gap. That's this structure here. That peak in there is the absorption of the dye. That's the transmission of the, that's the reflection of the system. And then there is the fluorescence of the dye, peaked for maximum tuning to the band edge. That line up there is the laser line. Okay, that's the essential optics of the chironomatic lasing system. There's a nice little cartoon that I quite like that John made for me a few years ago. It gives you an idea of the picture. It's a very silly cartoon, but it works incredibly well. You pump in green light, it gets trapped in the band gap, the fluorophores all get excited, you get a longer wavelength shift, and then at the band edge, out comes this massive pulse of laser light in a very narrow band gap. Okay? That's the essential optics, the essential physics of what you're looking at. So we'll see, I couldn't correct this slide last night. The experiment. This is one of the early variations, and I'll show you later on one of the miniature variations that we made. There's a commercial prototype of a laser system. You essentially have that little orange blob in there, is, if you like, the display device, or if you will, with a fluorescent dye, is the laser cavity. And then you pump that system and then look at the optical properties of that little test cell. Okay, the laser design is about 1 centimetre by 1 centimetre, but in that centimetre by centimetre are 1,000 or 10,000 separate individual lasers. And I'll explain why. Okay? So the cell looks like a large pixel, centimetre square. It's yellow or orange there because that's the natural fluorescence in UV light that you get from fluorescent tubes in a room. Okay? If you pump the system with green light and it's a red filter in the system, you see red light out. Okay, and we've twisted the screen a little bit so you see the residue green pump light going through the system and the red emission. So the green light is pumping the cavity, is pumping the chromatic to give a red light out. And that is a picture of one of the actual lasers, or one of the optics of one of the lasers. Here is your photonic band gap. Okay, that's your reflection band of your polysteric. Now there is the laser line coming out at or very close to the first minimum in the reflection band. Okay, and what you'll notice is that that is a very narrow line, characteristic, of course, of a laser. Okay. And that's just the area in the magnifier. But what you're seeing is a very, very narrow output of light. I'm pumping in with a laser beam. To show you how narrow that is the profile of the output light. It's almost Gaussian. So you've got this liquid crystal film, you're focusing laser light pump light into it. You're getting selective reflection in the cavity, the mirrorless cavity. Okay? And the beauty of the materials is it gives you virtually a near Gaussian mode. And that's very difficult to generate if you make a classical laser. You know, if you make a classical ND-YAG system, if you want to do mode selection, you have to put spatial filters into the cavity. The focusing of the beam, pump beam, gives the pinhole effect, if you like, or the spatial filter of the material itself. And then if you go to the far field, you can actually see the airy ring patterns of what that beam looks like. So you're getting, in a very simple film, a chiromatic liquid crystal with a fluorophore in it. You get it, you're pumping it with a focus laser beam, you're getting virtually TM or out. That gives you a large coherence area, which is what this really shows you. And the first paper that I'm aware of that shows this effect is the PRL by Victor Cotton's group. Okay. They first discovered this is our data, but they actually have their own data. This is one of our liquid crystal lasers. Now, I guess you can hear that. This is one of our early laser systems, pulsing away the rep rate of about a hertz. So you hear that. That's the Python flashing of the system. But what I'm doing, or what John was doing, was rotating the stage holder. Okay, so you're pumping light into your device, and then you're rotating the sample holder. And what you notice is the red light. Just go ahead and do it again. What you notice is as you rotate the stage, the light is always that comes out is always orthogonal to the stage holder. The light comes out along the helix. The light follows the optic axis of the chiromatic. So as you rotate around the sample, the beam always, in this case, comes out orthogonal to the layer frames of the nematic. Do you want me to do that again?
Yeah, I might be able to.
Okay. Try it again. That's the stage, and as it rotates around, you see the beam is always at right angles to that stage, always at right angles to the sample cell along the helix axis. And that's again another unique property of the chiromatic liquid crystal lasers. But it also tells you something. As I rotate around, I can put my pump light, my excitation into the cell at any angle. And indeed, I take the two extremes. There's the pump light going in to what we call end firing, sliding the system down the helix, okay? Or, be different, just to prove that it works. Shine the light in the side of the liquid crystal cell and the emission comes out towards you, orthogonal. So you can excite the system at right angles to the helix and you still get the laser light coming out in the helix direction. And that again tells you how to design your cavity, because now you say, okay, wait a minute, if I want to make an efficient cavity and an efficient light collector of the point light, I can make an elliptical cavity, I can make a spherical cavity, and design a system based around that to get efficient coupling between the input light and the output light. Right, you've now had, I don't know, 4 or 5, 6 perhaps lectures on liquid crystals and chiromagnetics. You will know that if you make a poorly aligned chiromatic, you get a Grandjean texture. So you get planar platelets with defect oily streaks around the planar regions. Now that is horrible in a sense. You can see the colour reflection, okay? But it actually gives you an interesting way of getting many laser lines. If you pump that system, you get emission in a whole band of lasers corresponding to each of those little platelets, which have slightly different pitch. Okay? And that's what you get if you have elastomers. If you make an elastomeric laser, Peter Parfrey, Pimpleman, etc., all made elastomeric lasers, you automatically get that kind of emission because of the polydomain nature of an elastomer, okay, through the cross-linking. If you want to make a very efficient narrow line width laser, you make a monodomain sample. You treat this system with a good surface aligning agent in this case, and then you get very narrow band emission. Then we're talking about 0.01 or 0.02 line widths, would now be typical. And you can measure a coherence length of that system. It's around 5 millimeters for this particular laser. And one of the reasons we're interested in this particular kind of laser is actually for a holographic projection with a mobile telephone. Okay, some of you visited Hisense and you saw the 3D TV set. Well, what we're actually trying to do is make a 3D handheld mobile phone. So you look at your phone and see 3D images. To do that, you're going to need some kind of, the way we would want to do it, not with viewing angle problems where you have stereoscopic images, but a real live hologram is actually put a little laser in the mobile phone and then use the screen as the hologram. And you'll see we're getting somewhere towards that as I move on. So, narrow line widths to give you through monodomain samples. Any of those materials actually gives you a laser. Okay, you can have 5-OCB, another 6-OCB, the cyanobiphenyls. They're all pneumatics. Put a chiral additive into your system, twist the structure up, and you'll make yourself add a dye, and you'll make yourself a laser. Now I put these materials up because I want to show you a comparison between the lasing properties of the monomers, the low monomass mesogens, and the dimers. And I talked about dimers yesterday, the so-called bimesogens. And if you look at, under the same conditions, the same reduced temperature below the phase transition, there is a telling number in here. If you look at this curve here, that is the lasing from the bimesogen. Okay, and if you look in the literature, there are lots of little laser papers down here based around E7, protecting moisture down there. Okay, it's about a factor of 10 lower in slope efficiency. So your threshold, and that's magnified threshold in there. It's around, in this case, around 0.4 microjoules per pass. It's not unusual to get down to about 18 nanojoules now. But this is just to compare the materials. And then for all of those different materials, we'll make little lasers under the same conditions, same amount of dye. Looking at the emission, then you see a threshold and you see gain. And the bimesogens at the moment give the best gain that we've got, the best slope efficiency. For this data, we're working at a repetition rate of about hertz, and we're using 5 nanosecond, 7 nanosecond laser pulses. But any of those liquid crystal materials which you can get off the shelf, you can go buy them, will make a laser. What's important? Because you want to make a good laser. What's important is you have, in a liquid crystal, you have an order parameter. This was just taking a few compounds affected at this temperature and looking at the order parameter, 0.6 up to 0.65, and doing a comparison of the same input energy and how the output energy changes. So you go from there about 170 up to around 230, just by changing the order parameter from 0.6 to 0.64. So you need in your system a high order parameter. You want ideally a high order parameter. The higher the order parameter, the better the efficiency of the laser. Again, this is just to show you that this is one of the bimesogens. If you change the temperature, you change the order parameter. Sure enough, as you go down in temperature, then the slope efficiency increases. For this particular material, this was the difluoro compound with a cyanobifenol at the other end, so it's the non-symmetric piece. You get already a 10% slope efficiency. In other words, you're getting 1/10 of the light out that you put in. Now that is as good as many solid-state lasers. It's probably as good as the laser that's in this laser can, in terms of relative to the optical pumping. Okay. But that's just the order parameter changing as you go down in temperature. I'll go on and show you how you can get to lasers of 60, 70, 80% efficiency. I said that the beam diameter is important, and it is. If you want to make an efficient laser, you go to a more tightly focused laser beam. We're talking about spots here of 90 microns diameter, and you can see that the slope efficiency goes up. Again, it's a function of energy that you put into the material. Okay, so comparable energies going from a 230 micron beam diameter, 230 nanometer beam diameter. If you go up from, let's say, 0.05, 0.04, up to by a factor of 10. Okay, just by changing the beam diameter. And you can tightly focus and more tightly focus depending on your optics. You don't want to go too far because you'll photo bleach the dye. So, if you want to start now tuning your laser, making a more efficient laser, then yes, you change the beam diameter. That improves the threshold. As you come down in diameter, you lower the threshold by a factor of 2 there, just going from 240 down to around 120 nanometers. And equally, you massively increase the slope efficiency. You've got more photons in a narrower volume, basically. Cell thickness. I said that the technology you use is more or less the same as you use to make a liquid crystal display. For a given dye concentration, okay, you get an absorption, you get the Lambert law type absorption of the lights as you go through the sample. For all of these lasers, and there's a lot of papers in the literature that quote efficiencies, you really have to look at the threshold energy and the slope efficiency as a function of a dye-chromatic combination, because you can lower the threshold energy by optimizing the optical path length, around 15 microns for this particular device, 15, 16 microns. So your threshold goes down. Okay. And your slope efficiency goes up. So you need to carry out this kind of measurement. You make a simple Kano wedge cell, and then look at the operating parameters of your device. Okay, you've got a combination of effects of if you have a long on-path length, you're going to get direct fluctuations in your device, which lower the efficiency. If you make it too small, you don't have enough length to gain lesion. Okay, and again, you'll get a Beer-Lambert type of absorption at the surface. So you optimize the cell thickness for a given dye concentration, for a given material. I put this in just to show you that you can go out, and I said at the beginning E7 wasn't really that good. E49 looked better. You have to make a comparison because the birefringencies of your systems are different. I just put that in there because delta N for E49 under the same temperature conditions is about 0.25 and E7 is about 0.20. Okay, and that gives you a different bandwidth of your liquid crystal laser or your photonic band gap, which is proportional to delta N. That just shows you that. Okay. And you can make, again, you make a path length, a weak Kano wedge, and again you look at the threshold against sample thickness. And again, you tend to find around 12, 15 microns is a good path length. And here you see something that I'll come back to, is there's the threshold. That's the slope efficiency for those two materials as a function of cell thickness. Same dye concentration, I've used TCM here. I'll come back to the choose your dyes in a moment. But you can make E7 look like E49. But you have to look at these operating parameters and you have to optimize the system. Okay. Experimental conditions matter. Okay. I'll take a 12 micron cell, that's near the minima of where I get the maximum slope efficiency or the minimum threshold. What happens if I keep pumping more and more and more intensity or more and more energy into the device? Well, you get a threshold, you get gain, and then something happens, you start losing gain. Okay? That would be for E7 and E49. One is slightly better than the other, but then you get this rollover of gain. You start losing efficiency. Why is that? Well, you're probably putting so much light into the system that the electric field of your laser beam is high enough to produce optical Kerr effect and start altering your, through optical reorientation, start destroying your cavity, or start making your cavity less efficient. You might also be starting to bleach the dye. Again, I'll come to that. And there you have it. A lot of papers in the literature talk about DCM. Okay, that's one of the fluorescent dyes. We found for these kind of lasers is that the pyromethanes are more efficient systems. So try to compare like for like. Take the same post E49, just as a workhorse, just to see the operating parameters. You see quite a big difference between the laser, the output lines are about the same wavelength, thereabouts. Okay, but you see a very big difference in slope efficiency. If you use a classical rhodomin dye, you're talking about 0.1, 0.8% slope efficiency. Not a good laser. If you go to the you go through DCM, you get about 9%. When comparing like for like, if you use pyromethanes, you're getting up to very close to 30%. So you need to choose your dye very carefully. So you need to choose your liquid crystal host, the delta N, its temperature range, its order parameter, and you need to choose the dye. But if you use the pyromethanes, and I think the 597 was one of the best we found, then you start making pretty efficient lasers. Okay. You start getting up to 20%, 30%, which you'll see 70%. Okay. I said that you had to worry about cell path length, you have to worry about dye concentration, because the mechanism is absorption and re-emission. So you have to worry about absorption within the first fraction of your cell. So if you change the concentration, yeah, you can actually drop the threshold to some extent, and you can increase the slope efficiency to some extent. And again, you start getting figures like 1.5% weight concentration. It's a pretty, for that particular dye, for DCM, gives you a sort of optimized system. So you do have to optimize your cavities, you do have to optimize the materials, the matic, and the fluorophore. But you start then, even with DCM, you start getting up to very high slope efficiencies, okay, 20, 23%, 32%, etc. Now that's with DCM. When I said DCM was a bad dye, so with a good dye, it gets better. Okay. When you bring down concomitant at the same time, you start bringing down your laser thresholds. Okay. Dye characteristics. The other thing you have to worry about is normalizing your quantum efficiency to 1. Okay, that 1 would be a perfect dye on that scale. Then the pyromethanes are actually quite good dyes, 0.7, 0.78, 0.72 quantum efficiencies. And you can look at the quantum efficiencies as a function of, again, of concentration of dye. So you do want a low concentration. Okay. And you also need to think about the lifetime of the fluorescence. How long you can, in essence, keep the system in an excited state. So you have to look at the dye, look at its lifetime, and also look at the order parameter of the dye. Because the dye at the moment is in solution in the liquid crystal. So it may not have the same order parameter as the chiral manicose. Okay. So you want high order parameters and you want long lifetimes. And then you start getting towards pretty efficient lasers. Tuning, I'll stop in a moment. The paper we gave at ILCC in Edinburgh 7 years ago, was showing that if you took a chiromatic, you could tune the system, okay, from with its function temperature from somewhere around 505 up to 605 nanometers. So that's the thermochromic effect, as you cool down the system. And you get these jumps. And they're kind of neat, because they're actually interesting physics. Is as you're cooling the system, the helix is flipping a half turn as it accommodates at the lower temperature and the helix pitch changes. So what you're seeing there in those different, what John called different modes, are actually half turns of the chironomagnetic helix jumping down, etc. Now, in an ideal system, you don't want that. You don't really want pitch jumps. But playing with the additives, as I'll show you, you can actually, by playing with the chiral additives, you can actually improve that and remove that effect. And what you do is you take what I call a positive and a negative dye, or a twisting agent. What do I mean by that? I mean a chiral additive that has an increase in pitch as a function of concentration, and one that has a decrease in pitch as a function of temperature, one that has an increase as a function of temperature, one that has a decrease as a function of temperature, and you combine them, and you can compensate that. And there's a little paper on that coming out in APL, it was accepted a couple of weeks ago, telling you how to add your pitch additives to get rid of those pitch jumps. Okay. You can play around with, I showed you that polydomain sample. You can make a slightly wedged cell, and because you change the pitch very slightly, as you move the sample around, you can actually tune through position, not by a great amount, but by 3-4 nanometers, you can actually tune the wavelength of your output light. You can also, and I talked yesterday at length about the flexoelectric effect, you can actually use an electric field across your device to switch the axis of the chironomagnetic and tune the laser through something that looks like a Friedrich transition. It's actually probably a continuous curve. Okay. And you can switch the wavelength as you deform the helix. Okay. It's better to think about it as deformation. I think of it as a Friedrich transition, but others don't. But I think that's the best way to think about it. And that's where I wanted to stop for coffee break, I think. Yeah? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Are there questions? Yes, please.
If I'm trying to talk about laser displays with blue and green lasers or lack of the good. So with that pretext, can you use red excitation and blue photon excite appropriate lines to get green or blue lasers?
I think the quick answer is probably not. But you can see, you need a second harmonic generation process. And we have done some work pumping the liquid crystal chironomagnetic system in the flexoelectric materials with a second harmonic generating dye and seeing that conversion. It's not that efficient. I may or may not, I can't remember the transparency of that here, but you can do it. But that isn't the best way to do it, because you're going the wrong way. You need a 2-photon process. You're absorbing in the infrared or red, pumping down to the green. It's easier to pump in the green or blue and go on. Okay. So, I mean, one of our goals at the moment is to take one of the. So I asked about the markets earlier. I want to go and get a 30 milliwatt laser like this and use that to pump the liquid crystal. You'll see that we're on the edge of doing that. Okay. But that's the easier way to go. And I think not so long from now you'll have a little laser pointer where you just press a button and tune the wavelength. Okay. Kind of neat. Kind of fun. But the second harmonic process, as you saw in those lectures last week, is a much harder process. It's a much less efficient process.
Are there more questions? Yes?
There are lots of local modes in the band end or the band gap. Can we believe that the laser stems from the local mode we believe that the laser is amplified from the local mode.
Sorry.
And
Too many periods on this. You'll find this when you try and copy this. Are you thinking of this picture? Good. Quite fun. With all the background noise, I'm trying to understand what's possible. Are you thinking of that? Is that the picture you...
no.
With all the fans over
And I want to know the local mode at the band, not the gap, or the band end okay, without the laser.
Yeah. That TM00 diagram I had was the output. That was the near field at the band edge. It's a single mode. Okay, it's a very, very I think I understand. I think now. There. That's the beam profile in the near field, okay, close to the laser, and that's the mode coming out of the band edge. It's a single mode device. That's the far field. That's the area disk type in the far field. That's the mode pattern you get from these lasers. Okay, yeah. If you've got a nice aligned sample, if you have a polydomain, then you get a number of modes. You get a number of lines. But with the chiromatic, it's unlike a DFB system. And you nearly always get a Gaussian beam. It's one of the properties of the lasers themselves. Okay? What I can't tell you, that's the transverse mode. We haven't done the spectral analysis for the longitudinal mode. But given the narrow line width, I think that's where it's likely to be monomode. Okay? It's not like a conventional cavity where you can set up lots and lots of standing waves. It's a property of the dielectric properties of the helix. And if you go through all the theory, you find that these things should give you single longitudinal modes. It's an averaging effect, as well as single transverse. Yeah?
And I want to know how much the quality of laser.
To me, that's it. That's high quality in terms of. But you mean the quality in terms of the gain, the Q factor? You have a single mode output, which is in a loose sense high quality. You've got a very high gain. Okay. When I go through some more examples after the coffee break, you'll see what I mean. Okay, after coffee I have some more pictures that I think will answer some more of your question. Yeah? And then after that, ask me again. Yeah? There was a question. Sorry.
Yes. I was just wondering what's the power of this laser? Because if we want to get a much higher power, maybe home placing and destroy the heavy structure.
After the break. I'll show you after the break. You'll see what kind of connection you get.
Yeah.
I'll show you after the break. This is what I try to concentrate here on is what is important with crystal properties to give you a highly efficient laser. And this last part of the lecture we'll talk about the construction of practical devices and then answer that question. How high you can get the power. Yeah? Alright. It's coming next, yeah.
All right, so, yeah.
No, you're yawning, I know. Behind you. Yeah, you'll see after the last lecture like I actually get into the practical devices, there are quite unusual ways in which you can increase, magnify the power. You see something that's quite different.
All right, let's thank our speaker.
How you might tune the systems, how you might get higher average powers of your devices. There are two papers with the leaders from the papers that have just come out, and I think they're on the way, available electronically now in Advanced Materials. How would you tune a liquid crystal laser efficiently? I talked about temperature and said you can do temperature tuning. I talked about wavelength tuning, and if you look back at the figures, they were tuning, but they weren't necessarily large ranges. You might not want to use temperature tuning because it's not necessarily efficient to have a device that you have to heat up and cool down to give you a different wavelength output. You can do it. Okay, that shows that. You more often than not want a laser device that is temperature independent, and that's the reason I mentioned that if you add the positive and the negative twist coefficient, if you think of it that way, as a function of temperature together, you can make temperature independent devices. Because ideally, what you want is what you have in a display device. You want to apply an electric field, and you want to be able to tune your laser as a function of voltage or applied field. And that's what I want to come on to. There are two ways of doing that. And both of the papers are available. Well, I know one's available and the other will be available in the next few days in Advanced Materials. And what you can do is play a game. You add to the surface of your cell. This is the first device, it's not the one here. You add to the surface of the cell a very thin layer of ferroelectric material at the bottom and the top. And then you switch with a voltage, as you found last week with ferroelectrics, you can switch from a tilt plus theta to tilt minus theta. Now what that does is switch the director on the surface. So you can switch it, let's say at the bottom, clockwise 45 degrees, and at the top, anti-clockwise 45 degrees. You may even switch it 90 if you have a 45 degree tilt material. So if you had a 45 degree tilt material, you'd have, let's say alignment along the direction of that arrow there, apply a voltage and you switch to be orthogonal. At the top you do the same. So you switch the alignment layer. And there's a number of papers on so-called command surfaces. The Chalmers group, Leshnar, Komitov, Claire Rudquist, etc., all worked on those systems. When you change the director of the surface, what do? You change the director of the pneumatic, because the pneumatic follows the surface order. And so you can take your chiral pneumatic material, okay, and you've twisted it, and then you switch the surface an extra quarter turn, which tightens the helix, or you go the other way. Okay, so you actually use the surface where my hands are to twist through 90 degrees, okay, in opposite directions, and you make for a tighter helix. And that gives you a facile tuning method. That works. What we've done here, if you like, is the latest and greatest, is combine some of the ideas of liquid crystal devices and displays, like technology, into the lasers. So what we've done is take a ferroelectric liquid crystal that phase separates in a chiral pneumatic. So it's a ferroelectric additive that is in the chiral pneumatic matrix. Okay, and that's shown by those little red blobs there, if you will. Okay, they're additives, dopants, ferroelectric dopants. So the colours come out peculiar across there. It's red. It should be red. In the matrix, and you switch in the volume of the liquid crystal. You switch the helix in the volume, and so as you apply a field across the system, you have little subdomains. You can imagine it almost like a CNT dispersion, but it isn't. It's a liquid crystal dispersion within a liquid crystal. And you switch throughout the volume the ferroelectric, and you do that for a very simple reason: is you can switch a ferroelectric much faster away from the surface than you can at the surface. When you switch the ferroelectric, you switch the helix. And I've drawn that so you sort of, or sort of drawn that, so you see a pitch length that has decreased through the switching, through the twisting. So you actually twist the whole volume. How good is that? I think those sort of curves tell you, I'll show you. That's the selective reflection for this particular sample, and you'll see the zero field band. There's your selective reflection of your band gap. Okay, that's the black one. Zero field. And then if you apply a field across the system, the band gap shifts across. Now, what's important, what's different? The shape of the band gap hasn't changed. Okay, so the band gap with zero field and the band gap with the higher field there is the same. So your laser efficiency, which depends on the band gap, as I said right at the beginning, isn't altered. So the gain isn't altered. So you've got a switchable system where the gain doesn't change as you switch the band gap. In many, many papers in the early work, when you apply an electric field across a chiromatic, you see a shift in reflected wavelength, but you also see destruction of the band gap. I'll go back a moment. How does that work? You use a negative delta epsilon chiromatic. Okay? So the primary dipole is across the molecule. That is in the same direction as the ferroelectric polarization of the additives. So when you switch the ferroelectric, you switch the dipole of the chiromatic. And you get a much faster switch than you get with the command surface. So the band gap doesn't change, and those are just typical reflection colors. They should be, the projector doesn't pick up the almost red of that device. But you can switch from a red, in this case, to 650, 660, down to 600 nanometers. And it's a very, very smooth curve. And it's reversible. You don't switch the helix and destroy the helix. You get a tuned helix as a function of a field. Okay? Sorry, that's the time axis showing you how fast that can switch. I'm interested in that, well, only for the laser cavity, but I'm interested in that as a time switchable filter. Okay, the command surface system switches much slower than the volume switch. What we're working on and what we have done is make a tunable laser that then is switchable in fractions of seconds rather than seconds or hours. And if you had your little laser pointer, as I infamously said earlier, you have a little button on the top and you perhaps thumb with it and you scroll it, you scroll the field and you'll scroll the laser output. That's what I want to see. Yeah. But what's important is that you can switch the wavelength repeatedly up and down as a function of field. Okay? So you need a negative material, sorry, you need a negative material and a ferroelectric inclusion. And it gives you a new kind of switching mechanism. Okay, what does that look like? Well, those are some of the actual test cells. Okay, there's the red reflection, 0 volts. Apply the electric field, okay, and then you go down from the red wavelengths up at, well, it can be as high as near infrared, in fact, 730 thereabouts, down, in this particular laser, down to about 680, 640. You can switch from red to green. So you can switch your wavelength output of your laser system from red down to green, providing you've got the right dyes in the system, okay, providing you've got the right chiromatic. Because again, what's important is that the shape of the band doesn't alter to any significant amount, the half-width. So you maintain the quality factor, the Q factor, of your cavity. Now, when we first sort of did this work, I guess we're going back, 5 years thereabouts, there was something that I alluded to earlier, and it's how, and one of the questions is, how can you make a CW or quasi-CW laser system in an organic material? You have an organic dye, you have an organic liquid crystal. With the very early work, we found that if you pulsed at 1 Hz, okay, down here you've got a very nice consistent energy output. But as you increase the repetition rate of the laser, that's the number of pulses you put into the pumping laser pulses that you put into the system, the gain drops off. And we think that that was due primarily to two effects. One is the optical reorientation within the system. I don't think it's heating. And perhaps photo bleaching of the dye. So we thought, hey, we've got a problem here. These crystals are organics, they ain't no good. You can't use them. But what I want to tell you now is how you get around that problem. Or you might get around that problem. The evidence in this work was that it had some kind of non-linearity. Now there are other physical ways of getting around the problem. You can take your car automatic, you can add a reactive ECG if we do that, and you can cross-link in a network. That stops the reorientation, but it makes it harder to tune. Or you can make a car automatic that has a glass transition. If you know anything about polymers, that behave like polymers, that you have an audit phase, you cool the system, it goes through a glass transition, and then you lock in and make a little crystal glass, but then you can't tune it. Okay, so you can do it, depends on what you want. So we want to overcome this repetition rate apparent problem. The problem is we saw it 5 years ago. And the way you do that, or one of the ways you do that, I think is beautiful optics. I said right at the beginning that the liquid crystal laser was about 1 centimetre by 1 centimetre. Yet I talked about spot sizes that were perhaps 50 microns, 100 microns. What you do if you want to have fun, if you have fun, is make a lensless array. So what we do here is take our pump beam, we use a collimating, in this case just for this experiment, we use collimating optics to make a broader beam. Okay, take a 1 centimetre, or a little bit more than that perhaps, beam. We have an array of micro lenses, and each of those micro lenses focuses down to one part of the display, one part of the laser. So now I've got 12 by 12 dots, 144 separate lasers. Okay, so I pump and excite the larger area, but locally I excite the 50 micron, 100 micron spots. And I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So I beg your pardon, this one's 100 by 100. You can get mine. Each of those spots in the chiromatic diode lasers, so each of those will give you an output, again, 10 by 10. And those are actually some pictures of what you see. That's the array being illuminated. This would be some of the early versions of the arrays. Okay. That is what you see if you look at the surface of the laser, and that's actually the output. The only reason that's cut down in size is just the collection optics to photograph the effect. But what you've got is side-by-side simultaneous lasers. And we've made 10 by 10, we've made 50 by 50 simultaneous lasers, so 2,500 lasers lasing at the same time in one cell. That gives you the clue as to how to make higher powers. Because if you combine those spots in the far field, lo and behold, you get an almost single Gaussian laser beam. That's the combination of 100 lasers in the far field in one area. So, to overcome any energy density problems you might think you had, you say, okay, that's fine. Liquid crystal cells are a large area, or largest area, centimetre by centimetre is easy. Let's make a whole array of lasers at the same time with the same pulse. So it's one single pulse coming in, and then 100 lasers lasing in 2 dimensions at the same time. And they maintain remarkable coherence. It's kind of fun. That came out in Optics Letter, I think, just before Christmas, I think that was 2008. So in the far field, you get something looking like a single Gaussian. What is it? I left out inadvertently left out the line width. Again, I'll come back to that. Right, yes. That's an array of one wavelength. Okay. And I've said you've got 10 by 10 or 50 by 50 lasers. So you've got 1,000, say, lasers, all lasing at the same time. What would be a fun challenge? A fun challenge would be, how do I make a white light laser? Okay, a laser that combines red, green, blue to give you white, inverted commas, light. In essence, you've got that here. I'll show you why. What we wanted to do was choose a number of different dyes. The only important thing here is choosing dyes for red, green and blue outputs with reasonably high order parameters. And we looked at a whole range of dyes in terms of their absorption and fluorescence, and therefore in terms of their absorption and lasing. Looked at their order parameters, measured the quantum efficiencies and lifetimes, and came up with 3 candidates for red, green, blue lasers. And they tend to be the pyromethine, is a very good red dye, and the coumarins. And that is the blue laser line, that's the green laser line, that's the red laser line, with those different dyes. Okay, and I've given you the absorption maximum and the fluorescence maximum on the right there. Okay? And we're actually looking, things we're doing at the moment is looking at the order parameters to try and maximize and optimize. So red, green, blue dyes you can make, you can use. So you can make a blue laser, a green laser, and a red laser. And then you use the array to combine them. You can do it 2 ways. One way is to actually take a chiromatic. Okay, so what we're doing is we're taking this is a schematic. So this is our liquid crystal laser cell. Here we have a concentration gradient of chiral additive. So I get tight pitch and long pitch. In fact, I get a spectrum of tight pitch and long pitch. If I use a combination of the coumarin and the pyromethine dyes, I can get the right absorption and the right emission. And then just for a single cell here, that would be that this on 2 elements. A green reflector and a red reflector, giving you, in fact in this case, a blue output and a red output. Okay, and that's the spectral purity. Those are arrays recombined in the far field, and they're very narrow line widths. And let's stress that they're very narrow line widths, red and blue. But we want to go on from there. And so we wanted to say, to make, as I said, a red, green, blue laser. And those are the different coumarin dyes and their structures that you can use to make these laser systems work. But that is a red, green, blue laser array. Okay? And you can what you do in this case is because I wanted purity of spectral colour and bands, is make a 3-compartment cell, just put in a polymer spacer. And in the far field, that's what you see. Blue light at 470, green at 5, whatever it is, 3-4, and red. Red, green, blue. And the beauty of that system, and it really is beautiful optics, is that you have tremendous colour purity. The laser lines to the narrow band, and those are the 3 points on the CEI chart for those 3 lasers. You in essence cover the majority of the CEI diagram. So you can generate a combination of those lasers, any colour in that spectrum, then white light in the middle. Okay. So, and that came out in optics just before Christmas. Red, green, blue lasers, simultaneous, recombined, far field, white light. So you're playing with the optics of the chromatic. This was just showing one of the simple 4-compartment cells we made. That blur in there is actually a white light laser against a black background, which is different with the photograph. Okay, that's just a combination of the red, green, blue in the far field. You actually get a white light source, white light laser. One of the ways in which we improve these systems and improve the dyes is, I said at the very beginning, that you need a high order parameter in the dye. Just to give you a feel for what we do is we actually make bimesogens. We put in, we try and bend the cores up a little bit, and then put a fluorophore, a lasing dye at the other end of the molecule. So I can put different end groups and get much higher order parameters, and therefore much higher efficiencies. Okay. That was the command surface one, that one's got out of position. This was the one where I switched the surface of the material. Now you asked about output powers. For one of our lasers with a slope efficiency of 15%, we get greater than 2.5 milliwatts CW. Okay, it's a single spot laser. This is a single spot, and we're pulsing at different rep rates, okay, 500, 750, 1000 hertz. 1000 hertz to the eye is continuous. These things are pulse. This laser I'm using is a pulse laser. If you move them quickly enough across the wall, you can actually see that. So up to a kilohertz, I'm getting the same kind of slope efficiency without any problems. Okay, that's a single spot. A single spot laser, liquid crystal, chiromatic, working at a kilohertz, which looks quasi-CW. If you want to increase the power, to answer the other question, is that's one array, one spot. So you do 1,000 dots simultaneously. So I'd have 2.5 watts. Okay? Because I recombine those lasers in the far field. It's not 2.5 watts CW or quasi-CW in the laser. It's 2.5 watts in the far field. So yes, the answer is by playing with the optics, you can go from a low-powered laser, a few milliwatts, to a few watts. Okay. If you want to increase the rep rate, this is the pulse rate. Okay. If you want to increase that, you just scan the dots. You put a little acoustic modulator into your system, or a positional modulator. So you go to, let's say 100 times 1,000, you go to 100 kilohertz rep rate. Or scanning fast, or raster scanning is fast. What we were interested in was saying, what do we get, what can we do with a single spot? If I go up to my 65-70% efficient lasers, then I can get much higher powers. But that's the average power coming out of our systems, but a kilohertz repetition rate, which I think answers the question I was asked earlier. We actually made a demonstrator from an electronics show in Japan last October of a little pump laser system, the optics, a little liquid crystal device in here, a back reflecting mirror, and then an output beam. Okay. And this is the system that was working quite happily at 2.5 watts, milliwatts for a single spot. So you combine them, if you put the lenslet array in there, combine them, you get up to a couple of watts. How big is that? That looks like an optical table to me. Laser, optics, output. That's what it looks like. That is a genuine pen of a normal size. Okay. That is the whole of the laser system. Source, optics, liquid crystal laser, output beam. So its dimensions are not much more in square size than this laser pointer. As far as I know, that's the first laser liquid crystal of that type to actually be manufactured and looking like a commercial device. You put it in a box. So with those systems, if you choose the materials, you can make a miniature system. It's not a micro system, the cavity is. You can make a high repetition. You can easily get up now to 10 kilohertz. And I put for a single spot 2 milliwatts. But if you combine with the lenslet array, then it's 2 watts. So you can make a miniature liquid crystal laser of about 2 watts. Which I think is kind of neat for an organic system. What do we want to play with? We want to play not with the lasers, we do want to play with the lasers, but we wanted to use them for something. And so what we did with that projection system is take the lasing, collimate an output beam, and play with the optics a bit, and then put a hologram into the device. Because what we actually want to do is project through a hologram. And if you look at that device there, that's the output field, that's the real and the virtual image transmitted through a computer-generated hologram. Okay, Alps happens to be the company in Japan that we were working with. So you have the real image and the virtual image. There's the leak through of the fundamental. But you can tune the laser. Yeah, I said you can tune the laser with an electric field, or you can tune it in position. And that is the same hologram, but tuned externally in the cavity itself. So the answer is yes, you can make a laser going up to a couple of watts, and you can tune its output from red to green. Now I'm interested in that for spectroscopy, miniature spectroscopy, because one of the things that I didn't say back here is when I have these arrays, I can use these arrays for looking at as input sources to do combinatorial chemistry, to look at combinatorial samples, to do Raman spectroscopy, completely new way of doing Raman. Is to use these spots and look at samples that are produced in a combinatorial sense, measure the spectrum, measure the Raman spectrum, absorption spectrum, whatever, Brillouin spectrum as well. And that's what I'm interested in doing, because I've got that fundamental narrow line width, which allows me to do those spectroscopies. Okay, let me go through to, that was the device and what it looked like. Those were the holograms and what they look like. What are we doing now? These are all optically pumped with miniature lasers, working with the miniature OPO system. What we're working on very hard at the moment is saying, wait a minute, we've got bright light LEDs out there. I want to pump my system with bright light LEDs to give me a laser nickel crystal that's tunable. And what we've certainly seen is stimulated emission at the band edge. With the green pump with the green LED, pump with the blue LED, you've got the emission spectra, and there you've got, it's not lasing, it's stimulated emission. Until I see that peak about 100 times bigger, then I don't believe it's lasing, I believe it's stimulated emission. Yeah, that's true in both cases. But notwithstanding that, having said that, if you take a photograph of it, indeed you see green emission or red emission at the band edge. So stimulated emission. Pumped with blue LEDs. These are Nigeria commercially available blue LEDs, or commercially available if you know the right person to slip a few thousand RMBs to. You can make a diode pumped liquid crystal laser, I believe. Come on to the blue phases to sort of finish off there yesterday. There was some beautiful work done by Peter Palfrey-Mohored's group on lasing blue phases. And the beauty of the lasing blue phases, this is actually BP2, was that you have, because of the chirality of the system, the high chirality, you have 3 orthogonal axes, and this was drawn rather euphemistically as red, green and blue. That was the pipe in the dream. If you have a cube and you distort it, you can in principle get orthogonal lasing. And what Peter's group showed is indeed you can see orthogonal lasing from liquid crystal platelets, but it isn't a very efficient system. I said before, the chromatics are more efficient than the blue phase. But notwithstanding that, you can make blue phase lasers, and you can make them give light out in 3 perpendicular directions simultaneously. And that's what Peter's group showed rather beautifully. It is a very hard experiment, Peter will tell you that. But you can see we've got laser lines coming out against the background. So I talked to you yesterday about blue phases, okay, the double twist systems, and the net of discrimination lines, the interlines of discrimination lines. I just want to sort of quickly flip back through that for a blue phase material. This is what I showed you yesterday, a typical mixture. It gave you raw temperature into blue phases. And then I said you can switch the band gap, okay, and you can choose the output color. And you've got large area monotonators just as you have with the aromatics, and you can switch the output using electric fields. So again, you've got a tuning mechanism for a blue phase laser. Again, that was just showing you the line width of the band of the reflections for the blue phases compared with the chromatic with the same birefringence. And that is, again, the output that you would get with a blue phase laser. That's from little platelets, and there you have the fluorescence background, and then the laser line coming out, which you pump the system. So you have a threshold, and then gain. But honestly and truly, the blue phase systems are very hard to make laser. You have to get exactly the right orientation. You have to think about what kind of dye you use, because is it a dye that goes into the host, or is it a dye that goes into the disclination line? And therefore, is it a long wavelength band or short wavelength band output? So, in summary, for what I've talked about over the last 4 lectures, you can use liquid crystal systems as very efficient photonic band gaps. Okay. You can have 1-dimensional or 3-dimensional chiral phases, which give you different display devices and different laser devices. They are microscopic. I stress again, the kind of laser cavity you're talking about, or I'm talking about, is the diameter of a human hair. It shows you how small it is. Which is why, of course, we're interested in incorporating those into the on-the-chip devices and fiber optics, the same dimensions as fiber optics. And one of the other things we're doing is putting these lasers into fiber optics as sources within fibers. Okay, that's the kind of optics we play with. You can tune the band gap. You can make a narrow line width, and you can tune the system now over the whole. We're not the only people to do this, I should say, but you can tune that over the whole of the visible spectrum. In fact, we have at the moment near-infrared lasers working, which you want for medical applications. But you can have blue lasers, so you can actually have the whole visible spectrum plus a little bit of UV plus a little bit of infrared. And I think what's important is you can pick up on the technology of liquid crystal devices to make very efficient tuning. Liquid crystal lasers, you can make elastomers, you can mechanically deform. I showed you temperature. If you use the AZO bimesogens, you can actually tune the order parameter in your system by flipping the AZO die. And you can tune your system. There are papers in the literature tuning the system with UV. The reason we don't go down, we have done that work, but we don't sort of push that work too hard, is the relaxation time. If you want to go back in time, you can pump from the trans to the cis to the trans, relaxes back at a rate. The norming process is very slow. We want to switch it faster, so we want to use electric fields. I think that's the key, the tunable band gaps in electric fields. But we've got down to pretty low thresholds. The highest efficiency we've actually seen is 70%. Can you think about that? That's 70% of the light you put in, you get out. But you put in green light, you get red light out. That is as efficient as any of the lasers that I'm aware of in the solid state regime. And then using the tricks of the optics that I talked about, you can get a few watts out of the system. Okay? So, when we started this game, 1999, I spoke to guys in the Optoelectronics Research Center, and they said, you can't use organics for lasers, you can't make liquid crystal lasers, they don't work. They never work. The last decade has shown that they do work, and not only do they work very, very well, with very interesting properties. And again, to answer the questions I was asked before the break, arrays, to give you an quasar CW, so you've got kilohertz at each pulse, and then 1,000 lasers recombined. You can have red, green, blue, it's up to you what you want. The beauty is there. Liquid crystal systems, you don't have to grow. You don't have to go use a crystal fab, a crystal growth fab. It's a fluid. It's a fluid somewhere between an isotropic liquid and a crystal. You can capillary fill the cell. The system self-assembles. The system assembles to be its own laser. If you want to think about things to do for the future without giving too many secrets away, think about what might happen in iotropic systems, iotropic phases. Think what might happen in biophases. Think how you can use self-assembly to make completely different kinds of lasers. And I bet you within the next 10 years you'll hear about all of those lasers. Iotropics, these are all thermotropic, biotropic, and biological. And that's the kind of fun I think that this game is. So I gave you 6 reasons yesterday why I should stop. I guess the cappuccino is still waiting, or the coffee's not quite cappuccino. It's 2 + 1, which I think is 1 coffee, 1 sugar, and 1 milk. Okay, that will be waiting. You're still most of you recovering. As I look around, I see people dropping off like the guy in the front here, this one here. Half asleep. Okay, that was a good night last night, I guess. And by the way, the internet is working. Other people might want to leg it out of here. Yvonne has already yet another group photograph. We had one yesterday, we're going to have another one today. Okay? And I guess the next speaker wants to get himself on like I did this morning. And I'd like, because it's the end of my lecture, I'd like to thank everybody for watching. Really, it's going to carry on. I'm not going to die tomorrow, I hope. But I think it's been a superb set of lectures. And I think you're a fantastic crowd, so thank you for listening. And thanks, Yvonne, for organizing it. Questions you asked. Yeah. So yes, just to reiterate the questions I was asked at the last coffee break. You can make 2-watt laser systems, and you can make them to commercial standards. Okay? And you can make them single mode. And I think there are a lot of solid state laser guys who should be worried about this work. If I was a solid state laser guy, I would, because I can just use my molecules to self-assemble. So it makes my production very easy. And I bet you see commercial liquid crystal lasers in the next 5 years. Okay. Does anybody want to take a bet on that? And I need to make some money fast.
We're 100 long.
Okay, 10 cents. Come on, you must have no questions. If not, I'll shut up and go away. If you like us, I know. If not, I'll start telling jokes if you're not careful, and they're really poor. Okay.
Excuse me. Excuse me.
No, there is a
Yeah,
question.
You stop.
Your last slide
Yeah.
concluding about the laser is easy to control by the mechanical information and temperature. But I want to know, is it stable for the laser output?
Yes, is the answer. Stable in terms of lifetime. That was why I showed you the mechanical's harder, because the mechanical's easier and harder. It's easy in the sense that it's an elastomer. Okay, so it's mechanically rugged, but you get several lines because of the different domain size in the elastomeric network. Okay. But no, where I showed you the there. As long as you don't go above the top of that gain maximum, that's stable. Okay, that's stable. The measurements we've done are stable. At that repetition rate in the lab for many months. Okay, so a liquid crystal cell just made, sealed in the normal way with edge seals, and that. We're doing lifetime trials now, but that's months. And it'll stay stable for months. One of the blue phase textures, again, I skipped over it yesterday. I can go back. Something I didn't talk about yesterday. Because it is the blue phase is the most fragile. The blue phase is the most fragile of the phases. Okay. So what I've done. So what I've done there is just actually this is the kind of material that is very fragile. Blue phase is fragile unless it's stabilized. This is the natural material where we induced a small amount of cholesteric phase and the blue phase next to it. That's 45 degrees, 48 degrees below the transition. To show you the stability of the texture, that's 1 month later. It hasn't altered. Okay, and this would be a system that you could use, we have used in the laser. And then just to show you that if the texture doesn't change, the output doesn't change. So the texture is fine. And with those curves that I showed you, provided you stay in that linear region, and that lasers at that same rate for months. And we haven't needed to go further because a university research department, but there's no reason why those lasers should decay. If they don't saturate at the top, then you're not bleaching the dye, you're not reorienting the dye, then it'll work in that regime, and the cell's sealed. So we can put that cell down, we can laser continuously for months, we can put it down, pick it back up, and you get the same output. Good question.
I have a quick question too. So if you mentioned that one application could be 3D display for the cell phones, how about large screen TVs? Is it feasible, or are there some fundamental issues?
I think ultimately this question down here, because we're using the array to generate the single spot, you can get 2 points out. But there's no reason why you couldn't put 3 of those together, 3 RGBs side by side. And if 6 watts is enough to give you a projection, then yes. But they are coherent. In fact, you can play a game and de-speckling. We have a lecture about speckling and de-speckling. You can de-speck all your systems. It comes out of the optics. But my guess is you could, and I'm not sure about, there are other laser systems that I could use that are currently available. So whether you break into that market cases is a question. But yeah, for mobile phones, I think they're going to be very interesting. Video, no small business.
Are there more questions? If not, let us thank our speaker for the great presentation. So now I have several announcements for those who will be reimbursed. So